like to call to order the Personnel Administration Committee for Thursday, June 8th, 2023. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderman Cone.
Present.
Alderwoman Clark Hubbard. Alderman Aldridge.
Present.
President Green.
Present.
Alderwoman Clark Hubbard. We have 3 present. You have a quorum.
Thank you. Quorum being present, I'd like to entertain a motion for the approval of the minutes from Thursday, May 4th, 2023.
I move that we approve the meeting minutes from our meeting, May 24th, 2023.
May 4th.
Second.
May 4th. My apologies. May 4th.
Second that.
Madam Clerk, could you please call the roll?
Alderman Cone.
Aye.
Alderwoman Clark
Okay.
Hubbard.
So that must have been,
Alderman Aldridge.
what was the second one?
Aye.
It was something for 200,000. Was it streets? Okay.
I
That was
think
for
there's
the,
some background noise. Somebody needs to be
Facilities.
muted.
okay, so that's the one.
I think that's the clerk.
Let's let me mute.
Mr.
Okay, I
There
got
we go.
President Green.
Aye.
Alderman Cone. I'm just calling again because of the noise. I'm sorry.
Oh, I voted aye.
Okay. Alderwoman Clark Hubbard. Alderman Aldridge.
Aye.
And President Green, 3. We have 3
Aye.
aye votes.
Thank you. So today we have a number of things to discuss. First, we're going to discuss the process for hiring legislative assistants, and we can do that in open session. And then we are going to need to go into closed session to discuss some of the applicants that we got for executive secretary and receptionist. And I think legislative researcher closes today, so we won't have that quite yet, but we'll be able to talk, at least start to set up interviews for those 2 positions. So first and foremost, for legislative assistants, this is the first time in recent history that that we have been hiring legislative assistants to assist aldermen. And so we reached out to the city councilor just to get some understanding of what we could and could not do in the interview process. And we worked with our board attorney, Louis Galley, on kind of developing a process that we think gives us some, gives flexibility for older people to be able to hire who they want, but also puts in place some basic HR principles so that if for some reason somebody would take issue with our hires or something like that, we would have kind of the paper trail that we need to show that folks are qualified for these positions and that they are working these positions. So I think I'll start off by sharing my screen and is talking through kind of proposal, but I'm open to feedback from the committee and anything that we want to change. So my hope would be that after this meeting today and we make decisions on this process, that then the clerk will be able to send all alder persons all of the resumes that they, or the applications that they received from candidates who are looking to be legislative assistants. I think every member of the board got between 12 and 31 applications for legislative assistant positions. So there were quite a few people who applied for these jobs. Then we would give older people a week between June 8th and June 15th to review the applications and just provide a list of people that they want to interview, a minimum of 3, provide that to the clerk to provide to the personnel committee. And the reason I'm suggesting we do this is there are a number of people who applied to work for more than one alder person. And so in the event that multiple alder people want to interview somebody, it may make more sense to let alder people know that so they can coordinate an interview time rather than having that candidate interview with 3 or 4 different people. If it turns out that nobody wants to interview the same candidates, then I think we're, it's a moot point. But I'm just trying to think through, because there are quite a few people who applied for multiple positions. So then after they let the clerk know who they are planning on interviewing, and we can figure out if there's any coordination that needs to happen between alder people who want to interview the same person, then alder people would schedule and conduct interviews by June 29th, so the end of the month. And we did ask the city councilor if people outside of the Board of Aldermen or outside of city government could be involved in the hiring process. I forwarded that opinion over to the committee. Her ruling on it was that no, when people apply to the city, they are private personnel records that we can't make public by inviting other people to the process. And so I know that there are some folks who wanted to involve their communities and kind of interviewing folks. I think maybe the way to still do that is to talk with community members about what they're looking for in somebody who holds that position. But the city councilor's feeling was that because they're private personnel matters, that we can't be involving people outside of city government in the hiring process. For the interviews, I think the key things that just need to be reiterated to alder people is that all candidates need to meet the minimum qualifications listed in the job description. So these are things such as knowledge of the legislative process, writing, public speaking, experience organizing meetings, scheduling, community engagement, analysis of legislation, and working with a diverse group of people and communities, and the ability to work independently and meet deadlines. All LAs must also agree to the following: that this is a full-time position. It's an in-person position. There should be a minimum of 24 hours worked in City Hall, and the remainder of hours work can be worked out in the field. Work from home time is allowed, but it needs to be requested and then approved by a supervisor. We need to have some documentation of that, just so if we do end up getting audited like we were a few years ago by the state auditor, that we have those personnel records. And that would also involve logging hours for the OCTA time card system, recognition that this is an at-will non-civil service position, that their direct supervisor is the alderperson for the assigned ward, but the positions are overseen by the personnel committee. So if there's an issue, folks would have to come to this committee, and that legislative assistants must work on city-related work. They cannot work on campaign work or personal work for the alderperson. The other thing that I guess I'll stop there for now, and just see if there's any questions on that or suggestions on that before we get into the next piece.
question. Madam President, I have a question.
Sure. I'm sorry, I'm not seeing is that Alderwoman Keys?
Yes, it is. Thank you.
Okay,
So
yes.
the question that I have, and I see here that it says full-time 40 hours per week.
Yeah.
Well, I'm logging way more than 40 hours a week, and and 7 days a week
Yeah.
as well. And so I'm just trying to figure out, how do we anticipate? I guess the real question is, why isn't this a salaried position?
It is a salaried position, but we're just making clear that it's a full-time salaried position. So that's a minimum of 40 hours per week. It could be more than 40 hours, but we just want to make it clear to folks that it's a full-time position.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Madam President,
Yes.
it's Alderman Cone. Can we change that though to specifically state that minimum 40 hours a week? Just add the word
Yes.
minimum in there.
Yeah, I will add that in there. Yep. That work?
Yeah.
Okay. So then the other thing, to provide some standardization to the process, went through and kind of looked at the job description and put together some general questions that can be asked of each candidate, and then also a section where the alderperson can add their own questions to be asked of each candidate, just so we have a tracking of how we're evaluating people, just like we've done for other positions that we've hired for. And I'll bring up that document in a second, and we can go through that, but asking that once the interviews are completed, that just each alderperson files their interview questionnaires with the clerk. So we have that paper record of those interviews. We'll need to just outline for alder people that any questions that are asked, in addition to the general questions, just can't violate Missouri Department of Labor guidelines, Equal Employment Opportunity Commission guidelines, and we've also sought some guidance from the personnel department if there are certain questions that they say are off limits in the regular interview process. So then, if this is able to take place over the next couple of weeks, then Thursday, July 6th, and possibly Thursday, July 13th, kind of depending upon how long it takes for alder people to conduct interviews, then Personnel Committee would approve all of the candidates that alder people have submitted to us as they want to hire them. And then the Personnel Committee will send that full list to the full Board of Aldermen. And so depending upon whether it leaves the Personnel Committee on July 6th or July 13th, the full board will approve all of the hires either at the July 7th or the July 14th meeting. Right after that, next Monday, after they are approved, then the clerk and the alderperson would email candidates offering them the position no later than July 17th. And then we would be looking for folks to start 2 weeks after that. So a start date, July 31st or August 1st. We're checking with payroll to see if there's a preference in that. And then Jay and the clerk are working together on developing an orientation for new LAs, and we'll come back to this committee and I think have a discussion about orientation and some of the things we need to make sure that LAs need to know regardless of who they're working for, so we can get that training set up for right after folks are hired. Any questions or concerns about that process?
Madam President,
Yes.
it's Alderman Cone. I think that this is, a good process. Obviously, I'm a little disappointed that we can't include community members in it. I think that they have a vital voice in this process. But I guess I can appreciate where the city councilor is also coming from. But I think we also need to kind of be clear that, I mean, it's excellent to have, goals and deadlines, but, some of these positions, some people applied for these roles, a month and a half ago and might have accepted positions elsewhere, might not be interested in it any longer. So I think we need to maybe, while these are goals, I think that, it's important to emphasize that they're just guidelines. They're not, a mandate.
Right.
Because we're going to have some flexibility in this process to accommodate the candidates, to accommodate the respective alder people and their schedules and all of that. So I want to make sure that it's not your expectation that these are like mandated dates, that they're just kind of a framework or guideposts for the process.
Yeah, I think the reason we tried to give this as a guidepost is our last meeting before summer break is July 14th. And I think it would be good to be able to approve those hires before that break, so that over that break, LAs can be onboarded, go through orientation, kind of have some time when we're not in session to work with their alder person and kind of understand expectations and all of those things before we get back into having a million committee meetings. And if alder people do not have their choice by July 13th, then I think we're either going to have to look at calling an additional meeting over the break to approve those hires, or would have to wait until we come back after Labor Day.
Right. Yeah, I understood and agreed. But also, like, some older people might move faster than others as well. Yeah. So, I mean, is it fair to say that all candidates are going to be hired? I mean, even if we did, let's call it a wave, like wave one would be, could we have wave one earlier than July 31st? And then like wave two is July 31st. And then wave three is either over the summer or when we return from summer recess.
Yeah, I mean, we definitely could. It's just contingent on the full board being able to meet to approve those hirees. But our rules do allow us to call virtual meetings if we need to call a meeting over the break. Right. And I would be fine doing that to help people get their LAs onboarded before coming back in the after Labor Day, if not everybody's able to get theirs approved by July 13th.
But I guess what if someone wants to hire someone, and I'm just throwing, but in 2 weeks, is that a possibility?
As long as those of us on the committee are able to meet in 2 weeks. But I think that actually this is set up so that in 2 weeks, they would have to provide the names to us. Because hold on, let me look at the calendar here. Okay, no, they would have, if folks want to move faster, then I think it's up to this committee if we're able to meet faster. I have a schedule to meet every Thursday. So if we get people sent to us faster, I'm fine onboarding them faster. The soonest they could start though is July 1st when the budget starts.
Right. Yeah. So I guess that's where I'm coming from is maybe we do it in like waves so that there's an expectation for all our colleagues as to like when people can be onboarded, and it's not just July 31st or some date thereafter. And maybe we say July 1st is an option, July 31st is an option, and some date to be determined for wave 3 would be like a third option. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And that way we're not also meeting like every week to do this as well. So, but it does provide some flexibility for alders that might have a, maybe not as robust candidate pool, or if, they've already had the opportunity, because we've had the resumes for the last few days. Some people might, I would like to try and probably interview or at least reach out to everyone who's applied to have conversations, but might not actually interview all of them at the same time. But
So I think we can definitely add that it can be flexible if the alder person moves faster, but earliest hire date is July 1. And I think we can also make it clear that this is the timeline if you want to get it approved before the board goes down and don't want to have to call additional meetings.
Agreed. And then lastly, these candidates, I mentioned this earlier, some of them applied, several weeks, if not, a month or longer ago. Have we sent any, aside from maybe a generic letter from personnel acknowledging receipt of the application, has there been any communication to these folks?
Not to my knowledge.
Is it maybe possible, like, if we're voting on this today, for the clerk to just send a email or a letter out to all of the applicants, thanking them for their interest and letting them know that we've established a process and to expect a phone call irrespective of hiring outcome?
I will give that question to the clerk.
And Matt, my suggestion would be is like not go as far to say give a phone call.
Yeah,
but
not like an email or a letter.
Yeah, just at least probably I know it's a lot of people that have applied, so when the clerk probably can get around to it, because I know he's also busy with other stuff. But like you say, maybe just to let folks know, hey, we did receive it, and we're finalizing the process now and plan to start. I didn't just want to go as far as a phone call instead of some folks may have like 30 people to call out 30.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't recommend if I thought I said an email or a letter or something, but yeah, I mean, phone calls are too much.
Okay. Do we have any of our clerks on at the moment?
I'm on.
All right. Tracy, do you know if that would be possible just to send everybody an email to let them know that we received their applications and they will, hear on next steps shortly, something like that?
Yes, we could, if they provide an email address, we could send them an email.
Okay.
letting them know that we've received their applications.
Okay.
Okay.
Sounds good.
I'm not.
Madam Chair, would that also include CCing the alder?
We probably could do that. Tracy, would it be too much to CC the alder person on that who they applied to? Well,
No.
that gets tricky though, because some people applied to every single alder person. And so then they would be getting 14.
Right. So
Better.
we can make it work though. We could just
Okay.
say if they applied for all 14, it could just be one email.
Okay.
Yeah, one email with
received
14
your-
older people. CC
Yeah.
them.
Need. Okay.
Right.
great. If you could do that.
So popular.
Yeah, yeah, there were a few that that applied for everything, so try not to bombard them with information from a million older people.
Okay,
Awesome.
okay, I got it.
Okay. So with that, I think if there's no other amendments to this process, then I would entertain a motion to approve this process and have the clerk email it out to the full board later this afternoon.
So moved.
Alderman Cone, second.
Second.
I hear a request for previous role.
Previous role.
Hearing no objection, we have approved this process. All right, the next thing I wanted to go through just before we go in a closed session is in the past, we have done, let me get it open here. We've done a sort of a rubric for candidates as we interview them with some standardized questions. We looked back at some of the questions that we've asked from of other processes. Hold on, I'm trying to find it here. Okay. Let me. I'm trying to get the correct document to open here. All right, here we go. All right, this is in the drive as well. But the standard questions that we've had for other interviewees are talk briefly about your background, interest, and qualifications for this position. Discuss what you know about the board, its legislative processes, Missouri Sunshine Law, what research, writing, analysis skills you possess, and how would they be applicable to the work at the board. Share some examples of when you worked under pressure with tight deadlines, as well as how you keep yourself on schedule for longer term projects. Discuss your direct experiences working and interacting with diverse groups of people. Give some examples about how you set yourself up to ensure you're able to accomplish your goals while working both independently and functioning within a team. And talk about any background you have in public speaking, including how you prepare, engage with the crowd, and how you've dealt with difficult people in the audience. Discuss any prior experience you have working for a leader or organization or elected official, including some of the challenges and how you've handled them. And then what is your level of expertise with Microsoft Office, Google Workspace? Are there any software programs that you have experience with that might translate well to working in the position? And then we added 5 more questions that older people can add their own personal questions for what they also want to ask the candidates. If they want to put more in, they obviously can. But this would then, the rubric would just be filled out as a part of the application process or the interview process and then filed with the clerk. So we have just that paper record of interviews. Are there any questions we want to omit? Any questions that we want to add?
These are just like the general questions, and then alder people will be able to add
Yes.
their own.
Yeah.
I think that this is fine for just, basic interview questions.
Okay. If that is the case, then I will entertain a motion to approve the generic questions for our interview process.
I move that we approve these as the generic questions for the interview questions for the legislative assistant role,
Second.
previous role.
Hearing no objection, motion passes. All right, with that, we are now going to need to go into closed session to discuss some specific applications we received for some other positions. Let me get my closed meeting statement here. Oh, where did it go? Okay. At this time, I would like to entertain a motion to go into closed meeting session for the Personnel and Administrative Committee under the provisions of section 610.0213 and section 610.022 in order to permit the members of the committee to discuss matters related to the hiring, firing, disciplining, or promoting of employees of the Board of Aldermen.
So moved.
Second.
Previous role.
Hearing no objection, if we could please be placed in closed session.
Are others on here?
You're muted, Madam President.
How long was I muted for? The whole
The
time.
whole time.
Probably. I was like, is anyone else in here?
I was just talking away and had no idea that I was muted. So I was just saying that the last item for discussion today is the employee handbook. That the draft of the handbook that the clerk has worked on was emailed to the committee. We're not going to take action on it today, other than to ask committee members to start reviewing that. And in a meeting meeting in the next couple of weeks, we'll work to figure out if there are additional sections that we think need to be added to that. And my hope would be that we can work on this over the break, and by the time we come back in September, we have an official employee handbook that is adopted by the personnel committee that we can then send to the full board for adoption. So with that, are there any further discussion or announcements for the Personnel Committee today?
Madam President,
Yes.
I know the handbook link was sent out, but emails are coming in pretty fast and furious. Would it be possible to re-up that email?
Yes, we can do that.
Thank you.
All right. If there's no further announcements, I would entertain a motion to excuse the Alderwoman from the 10th for necessary absence.
I move that we excuse the Alderwoman from the 10th for necessary absence.
Second.
Previous role.
And with that, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
I move that we adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you so much.
Thanks all.